Welcome. We're going to look at some of the factoring techniques in this section, starting off with basic common factor method. Solve means get x by itself. So we'll use the AB equals 0 theorem, that A equals 0 and B equals 0, because there's no way you can get 0 if one of these is not already 0, or both of them. So that means we can say that x equals 0 or x minus 3 equals 0. And when you add 3 to both sides, we get x equals 3. So that means our solution set is 0 and 3. And what that actually means is that those two places are where a graph of something crosses. It could be more like this for all we know, but that's why other information would help us to do that. But we know that it crosses the x-axis at those 2 points. Next thing we'll look at is solving using square roots. So in this case, what we have to do is to use this square and take the square root of both sides. But we can't do that while there's a multiplier here or any other type of thing. It has to be the square by itself in order to now take the square root of both sides. And this is where we do plus or minus the square root of 9. So we get the x minus 4, because of course the square and square root cancel out, and plus or minus 3, and then we're going to add 4. So come up here, and right now we're looking at this. Or you can be saying it as 4 plus or minus 3. Either way, what we're really doing is two separate things. 3 plus 4 and negative 3 plus 4. So what we get is x is equal to 1 or 7. Okay. And if we were to go in and put those numbers, either one of them in here, the square would basically make that square. They're going to get negative 3 squared or positive 3 squared. And that multiplies to 5 to make 9, or to make 45. Okay, so that means that with that. The next method is completing the square. So the first two are pretty much straightforward, and even this one, about the only thing to remember is about the plus or minus. Don't forget to do the plus or minus and the cleaning up first. Okay, so when we're completing the square, you have to remember the steps for it. So let's review that. In order to, and we're going to solve, that means we keep everything over on this side, not where with the equal here. So actually, we wouldn't need to. So we'll move the 14 over. So we're going to add 14 to both sides. Equals 14. Now here, we need, what we have here is ax squared plus bx plus c. And if it's the correct one, if the c is the correct number, we can have a polynomial x plus or minus something squared. So that's what we want to get to, but what we need is the correct c. Okay, and to get that correct c, what we do is use the formula of that the c is equal to b over 2 squared. The b is a positive 12. That means we have 12 over 2 squared. That's 6 squared. That's 36. So we're going to add 36 in there, but we also have to add it on the other side. So what we get is x squared plus 12x plus 36 equals 14 plus 36. So if we're going to add it on one side, we also have to add it onto the other. So that's something we can't forget about. Okay, so we just added that much. So now this does give us x plus 6 squared equals 30, 40, 50. Okay. So we have x plus 6 squared equals 50. Okay, so let's review back here as to what we did. So you need to remember about that formula. And then you need to remember that what you get from it, you have to put on both sides to balance this out correctly. Okay. 30, 40, yep, okay, we're going to 50 there. Now we can take the square root of both of them. Square root of that, and it's plus or minus the square root of 50. And let's continue up here as x plus 6, just plus or minus. Now let's analyze square root of 50. 25 times 2, that's 5 squared, so we can take a 5 out. 5 root 2. And then we'll subtract 6. So x is equal to negative 6 plus or minus 5 root 2. Unless you're supposed to make it an approximate, you would leave it like this. This is an exact answer. If you round to the square root of 2 and then multiply and then add and subtract to get the two answers, then you're not going to have exact answers. So depending upon what you're told to do, you would either leave it like this as an exact answer, or you would get the two answers you need by putting it in the calculator with the decimal involved with the square root of 2. In this case, we're leaving the exact answer. All right, now where we go next, let's come on down to the next one. Completing the square can be done if you can, add to both sides, if you can do this. And you can do that for anyone, even the hard ones. But here you have solved by using the quadratic formula. So notice this is the same one. We're going to get the same answer, but we're going to do it by using the quadratic formula. So we recognize that A equals 1, B equals 12, and C equals negative 14. So the quadratic formula, in case you've forgotten, x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2 times a. So that means that the x's that we want are equal to negative 12, so 12 is the b, plus or minus the square root of 12 squared minus 4 times a times c. And all of that over 2 times a, which is 2 times 1. Okay, great. Now let's simplify a lot of this. That's negative 12 plus or minus. Well, now we've got a lot in here. We have 144 here, and we have a positive. Two negatives make a positive, and it looks like we have 60, let's see, 14, 60, 40, 56. Okay, 4 times 14 is 56. That is 200 over 2. Well, 200, square root of 200 is 100 times 2, and that's 10 squared, so that's actually 10 root 2. So x is equal to negative 12 plus or minus 10 root 2 over 2. And this is where the 2 has to go into both of these. The safest thing to do is to make two separate fractions, but you don't actually have to. However, it is better to do that because it just makes sure that you get the right numbers in the right places. So that 2 over 2 becomes, oh, it's a 12. For some reason, I put that. I need to put it as a 12. Sorry about that. I did have it correct here and here. So now what we get is negative 6 plus or minus 2 goes into 10 5 times 5 root 2. That is just like what we got here. Negative 6 plus or minus 5 root 2. Negative 6 plus or minus 5 root 2. Now, if we did this as decimals, right, so if you did put it in the calculator and approximate it, we would get negative 6. Take away 5 root 2 would give us a negative 13.07. Negative 6 plus 5 root 2 would give us a 1.07. So I would then do this as the solution set. Right? But in this case, there's no reason not to leave it as the exact answer. And in general, that's what I want you to do, is leave it as the exact answer. All right, so that shows these basic factoring techniques, factoring or solving techniques. You solve with factoring, take the square root of both sides if that is appropriate, complete the square, and then it becomes just like, at this point here, it becomes just like the second one up here, the solve using a square root, because now you take a square root of both sides. And you do want to make sure you remember the quadratic formula, because there are times when you don't want to go through all this work. It's actually more work for some people than this is. And if you're uncertain, you can always fall back on the quadratic formula, even if the other ones can't actually be done. I hope that helps with part of this section. Thank you for watching and listening.